What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Microcast. As usual, today's episode is hosted by me, TJ David, and Zoe Rome.
On this week's episode, we're going to warm up with some super fun, hot or not topics, including our take on friends who don't care about running and running dates, which is, I guess, the opposite of that.
I can't wait to talk about running dates.
I'm already, I could take or leave them.
Yeah.
I'll say it now. I'll say it right up top.
All right. Well, hold on. Let's not spoil the fun here. We're also approaching our 5-year microversary with Microcosm Coaching. And in today's discussion, we're going to talk about the things we've really learned in this process and how those things have informed the next iteration of Microcosm Coaching, which we're kind of simultaneously launching about the time that this podcast is going to come out. So some great information there. We're going to close the conversation with a talk about transition season and why we've stopped calling that an off season over here at Microcosm Coaching. And I think athletes are really going to like this because it's kind of transition season out there. It was gray and rainy this morning. Now it's sunny. Yeah. It's going to be gray and rainy this weekend. And, you know, it's just kind of one of those times of years where we've completed our goals and we're wondering what's coming next and how do we train for what's next.
Yeah. But before we dive into the good stuff, if you're an athlete who's thinking about coaching as we move closer to 24, if you've been contemplating asking about support as you work towards your goals, you need help deciding what your goals should be or even what your running journey should look like, get in touch with our multidisciplinary team of coaches. We would be so excited to support you and hear from you, particularly as we are in this season of really upskilling in the work that we do as an organization.
I love it. This is the perfect time to join the team.
So hit us up at microcosmcoaching@gmail.com.
That's it right there.
There we are.
All right, let's get into the good stuff. Let's talk running dates. Hot or not?
I'm going to say either way. You know, we went on a couple running dates early in our dating career, and now that we're like really doing the dang thing and living together and running a business together, I think that we have
and getting married,
doing that dang thing. I feel that it's been healthy and productive for us to take running space as like our own sort of thing. You know, just kind of like how our relationship evolved, our specific individual journeys with running have also evolved, and running and our relationship are both wonderful, beautiful things that are both big enough to hold all of that tension, all of those journeys. And I feel like right now we're at a stage of not trying to cram all the journeys into one thing.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. I think the running date almost can put pressure on certain people who are going running. You know, am I going to be able to keep up? Do I look good in these shorts? Like, you know, all of these different questions that you might have. And although I'm not sure, how do you date without running? Gosh, the running date really helps to facilitate things because you kind of get to do that thing that both people have in common.
Yeah. And it's like kind of, it's nice. And I think it can be a great way of like sort of, you know, you can be vulnerable and really get to know people in a context that is important to your life, right? Like if you're someone like us for whom running is central to their identity and journey, getting a sort of gut check on how those things triangulate with another person can be really helpful.
Yeah. And running is also, you know, any kind of movement breaks down those barriers, right? Yeah. So it facilitates some openness and some conversation. It's kind of like a little lubricant for opening people up more, you know, in a social context where I feel like with dating and stuff like that, thank God I don't have to date anymore. Haven't for a long time, but you know, where you feel a little that there's that social anxiety and I don't know what to say. And how do we facilitate this that kind of awkward, I feel like that kind of person in the dating context.
I'm an amazing dater.
And because you're chatty, you're chit chatty, and I'm not. I'm like, I like to listen, and you like to chat. So it's like, you know, I need the run to like open me up so I can chat,
and I need it to slow me down so I don't just talk at someone for an hour straight.
Right, like I need to go a little harder on the hill climb so you can't talk as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess like in the right context, it really works. I think that like anything, right? It's like, it's kind of like yes or
Yeah.
there's like, it's that gray area where it's like not one or the other thing. It's kind of like this and something else.
Yeah, but I would just say if, anyone, like if this is something that doesn't currently feel fun and exciting to you, or going on runs with your significant other or someone you're interested in doesn't feel joyful and light, like you don't need to mess with it, and that's totally fine. And maybe those feelings will come back into that situation later. Don't force it. I know we've just been through like iterations of our relationship where that wasn't time that we really needed to prioritize together because we were prioritizing other things, and just kind of comes and goes in waves, and that's pretty normal.
Yeah, it's also, gosh, it's also hard for two people with different goals to run the same runs.
Yeah.
And like once in a while it fits in. I think like we figured out like a good way to do it. Okay, like if we're traveling and adventuring, we kind of take the training expectation of it out of the equation and then focus more on the adventure, and that it's going to be shared time. And then when we're training, it's training. And then that's kind of like our individual time, because we have different goals and different needs, and we run at different paces, and we have different training schedules, like
and
as
day
we
schedules,
should, and work schedules and all of that. Also, you like to do your long runs a lot with friends. You run with Kylie a lot, Coach Kylie.
Kylie's my number one running date.
Yeah, and I kind of run solo most of the time.
Yeah.
Or sometimes with Sean. So it's, that's kind of got to find you got to find what works for you and be willing to experiment a little bit. So I'm not hot or not on this.
Yeah. I'm like it just depends. It's very situational.
But what about having friends who don't care about running? Is that hot or not?
I'm going to say that's super hot. Insofar that they respect your value of running. Some of my best friends are folks I know through comedy. And they're very, very supportive of and engaged in my running journey, while also really only barely understanding it, which I like, because I could tell them I won Western States or I DNF'd, and they're going to have pretty much the same reaction, which is like, awesome, cool, great, we love you unconditionally. We don't care how fast you are because we don't understand what that means. And I think that's a really healthy way of tempering our own attachment to these things. I can tend to overemphasize achievement and athletic stuff in my identity. So surrounding myself with folks for whom doing anything physical is an achievement can help me sort of like recalibrate my own identity and attachment to these things. I would say the only sort of flip side to that is sometimes I see athletes get sucked into friendships where they feel like they need to be up past their bedtime and or consuming substances that are counterproductive to their training and recovery. And I would just like make sure that the people you're hanging out with, again, they don't need to be runners. They don't need to know or understand or even care about what you're doing. They do need to be in alignment with your values. And if one of your values is excellence, and that mandates and necessitates adequate recovery and a commitment to the training, you need to make sure your friends are in alignment with that and supportive of that.
Yeah, I think that that's really the key, and why it's super hot to have friends who aren't running. You get that perspective, that outside perspective, but they also share with you some of those underlying values. They understand the pursuit of excellence. They understand what it's like to be in the process of pursuing growth in something, and everything that kind of entails. And the cool thing about that is they can bring that perspective from their pursuit of those things. They might be parallel to yours, but just showing up with different vehicles of expression. So like we have running as a vehicle of expression. We're pursuing different running goals, but perhaps, they're pursuing something in professional life, or they're pursuing another athletic goal. Maybe like we have a lot of friends who are climbers and cyclists and things like that. And I think that that's like almost invaluable information, because if everyone is like just the same as you and doing the same things as you kind of just get the same information mirrored back to you all the time. And then it's much more, I think, difficult to see where your blind spots are, where you could have a different look at something or different perspective, and how you can continue to, I don't know, move your process forward as a friend and community member and an athlete and a human, and all of these different parts of our identities.
My best advice would be to pursue relationships and friendships that are premised on shared values, not shared interests. So like my comedy friends, like sure, we have the comedy in common, but the people I feel most connected to are the people who are like they won't drink alcohol if we're doing comedy because they want to be as sharp as possible to perform, right? So it's kind of a similar thing to the running where we're committed to excellence in whatever pursuit we're gravitating towards at the moment. And so again, I think it's like, make sure that you're getting back to the shared values and don't overemphasize the interests.
Yeah. Values, just can always head on over to our podcast on values and listen in on that, because this is just so central.
Play the microcosm drinking game where every time we say values, you take a sip of water and you end up very hydrated.
Okay, I just have to do a shout out really quick to what are these things called?
Spindrift.
I have discovered the tall boy.
Yeah.
The Spindrift tall boy at our local performing arts center.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy about that because now you get twice as much fluid.
Yeah.
And it's just as sparkly and delicious.
Yeah.
You don't need an alcoholic beverage.
Yeah. If we could get any sponsor, it would definitely be Spindrift.
Yeah. If you're a Spindrift representative out there, give me a call right
Our
away.
values are aligned. Our values of lightly effervescent fruit juices are aligned.
Speaking of alignment, I'm curious if we're going to be aligned on this next thing, Zoe. Ooh. Step ups. Hot or not?
Hot. Yeah, as long as you're doing them correctly and you are doing them strategically.
Okay. I'm hot on step ups too. I don't think they're a cure all, as I kind of, sometimes I see them out there. It almost feel like, I hate to admit it, but like whenever I look at like a mountain runner's strength routine and they're like, and then I don't see step ups, I'm like, oh, gotta add those step ups. Yeah. And I'm like, shoot, this is like a cure all.
For the folks at home, what's a step up?
Step up is you have like a step in front of you, and you essentially step up on one leg onto the next step.
What a step up is when you step up. So what we're
it's an exercise.
Incredible from Coach TJ. Good stuff here. So just to like really break it down for folks who maybe are newer to strength training, particularly this more mountain specific style of strength training, it's usually when you have a step or a stair, and what you're going to do is put one leg on the step or stair, like an elevated surface, I think ideally 12 inches off the 10-12 inches off the ground. And you're going to extend your leg and bring your body weight up as if you were going up the stairs, but you're only going up one. And then you're going to lower your sort of hanging foot back down to the ground.
I would rather not get caught up in trying to describe this when you can easily YouTube it. But yes, that's a good description. Much better than mine. The point of these are we're building muscular endurance. We're building, you're helping to recruit more slow twitch muscle fibers, the things that you need to climb better, move up the mountain in a more efficient and stronger way. And hopefully, ideally, like feel less fatigue over the course of a long race.
Yeah.
And we've seen these really help athletes. I'm definitely hot on them. I don't think they're right for everyone. And I don't think sometimes the way everyone does them is correct, in terms of like a lot of people do them without weight and they do a lot of repetitions. You know, it really depends on the individual. But in general, these are a great addition. If you are a trail runner, mountain runner, if you're doing any significant vert in your weeks, these are pretty hot. You should add them in.
I love these because they don't require a ton of gear. They're very functional. I personally will add a bit of weight via a weight vest as I go on in the season, but I would definitely recommend working with your run coach, your strength coach, your PT to determine how many and how heavy step ups are right for you.
Yeah, love it.
Talk to your doctor if you have step ups lasting 6 hours or longer.
All right. You're practicing for your improv show tonight, I can tell, and I'm already excited for this. Okay. Last but not least, hot or not, sleeping in and running later in the day.
You know what? I really almost never regret sleeping in. That's my hottest take, is that like I need all the sleep I can get. And yeah, usually there's like 1 or 2 days during the summer where I'm like, dear Jesus, it's really hot. Was it worth it? And I'm usually like, yeah, it kind of was.
I would kind of agree on that. If I try to never set an alarm.
Yeah.
I recognize I run my own business. That's coming from a place of privilege. I don't necessarily have to set an alarm most of the days of the week. But if you can get up without the alarm, from what the researchers are saying is you're you're going to be ensuring that you get the most sleep, or the sleep that your body really needs. And if you set an alarm, they kind of say, well, you're most likely not getting enough. And so if you have the chance to sleep in, and like, even if it's on your long run day, even if it's on your workout day, it's going to be a little hotter, especially if you know you need it.
Yeah.
Take that opportunity.
Yeah. Take the sleep where you can get it.
I think it can be really, really helpful. And you know, if it's not going to be super hot out, hey, it's fall. Like, this is the time to start catching up on those things.
I know, you know, for folks that have to be in the office at certain times, or who have parenting responsibilities, it all gets complicated. But if you can sleep in and run later in the day, I'm into it. Yeah. I feel like also, like, for me, I need so many calories before I run. So I have to, like, I'm already like, okay, well, I gotta get like, you know, 70 minutes to digest. So for me, not running right away is pretty ideal.
Right. I like to get out early, but honestly, oh gosh, the way that this has been going since Leadville, I've needed all that extra sleep. Yeah. Even though it's been 2 months now, I feel like I've still really needed that extra sleep. It's funny how that works.
Yeah. So we're pretty pro sleep.
Yeah, it's hot. We're not just pro sleep, we're hot on sleep.
Yeah.
All right, let's it's been 5 years. Can you believe it?
Can you believe we're here doing what we're doing now?
I can believe it. I visualized it back in 2018 when I started this. I knew that we would be successful. I didn't think we'd be as successful as we have been, as quickly as we have been. Mm-hmm. I have to be honest. I think at some time, at certain parts of the process, I've been like, okay, got to get this together, got to figure this out, because I didn't, you know, I wouldn't have planned for this. I didn't think that I would need to so quickly. And it's amazing, like, the entire journey and what you can learn. 5 years is a long time, but it also goes really quickly.
Yeah. I'm curious, in the past 5 years, what has surprised you most about Microcosm in this whole journey?
I've been so surprised at, like, how many people have leaned into the community. Mm-hmm. I always felt like that was like a pipe dream that I was kind of adding into the, not, I don't even like adding in, but creating alongside of the coaching services. And to just see how we get to celebrate so many people week to week, and how many people are interacting, what was first on Facebook and now has moved over to Slack, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
I feel like there's like no replacement for being with your team, seeing other folks going through the journey, knowing you're not alone in the process, being inspired by other people's commitment and ability to become vulnerable and work through challenge to, you know, see their dreams to fruition. That is, like, super cool. I'm excited to see what another 5 years will look like in terms of the community development. And I don't know, big aspirations, obviously, for us at the organization, is to make this something that is not just online, that is like in real life too, and to figure out ways to get creative with that, because we're all over the world.
What's the biggest thing, or what are several lessons that you've learned sort of in this journey of Microcosm? Because I think something that we've done really well is, like, not being like, things look different than when we just started, right? Like, we've been really open and honest and vulnerable about owning mistakes, about learning from failure, and about always remaining open, and always asking ourselves, are we doing this because this is the best way, or are we only doing it because this is how we've always done it and this is how we see other people doing it?
I mean, there's so much in there, right? I think it's so important to separate, you know, how are we mentored? How have we been taught? What are other folks doing? All of that is valuable, really valuable information. But I think for me, what it comes down to is distilling all that information into something that you can then use to make a difference in the athletes' lives. Like, how do we actually take all of this great information? There's so many different ways to coach. I mean, even today, everybody's a coach today. Like, it doesn't even feel like an exaggeration to say that there's so many different coaching operations out there, organizations, offerings, ways of doing this, different kinds of services, different deliverables. Like, and distilling that all down to, like, what you believe actually works is a really difficult process.
Yeah.
And it's like, I hate to say it, but some of it is trial and error. And, like, if you don't learn from the mistakes that you've made, if you're not willing to own those things, I think eventually people figure that out, and then they will leave your organization and they'll go and work with somebody else who they feel like is a better match for them. And although, one organization can never be the right match for everybody, nor is it probably healthy to have that mentality that you can serve everybody. The goal is to serve as many folks as you can to create as much change for the greater good. And at Microcosm, we're all about changing the culture of running, and particularly the never enough mentality. We really want to work with athletes to feel like they are enough, that they are doing enough to achieve their dreams. And then how do we put together a system of coaching that actually is effective in helping people do that? And that's really the key. It's all about the communication. It's about the coach-athlete relationship. It's so much more beyond the plans that athletes get, but the way that they communicate with their coaches and stuff. And I think for us, really, that's been the biggest thing where we've learned lessons.
Right. So tell me a little bit about how you've evolved the feedback process over the years, particularly in terms of accentuating the positives. Why is that important?
Well, I think when people figure out like what they're doing right, even if it's the smallest thing, they start to kind of cling to the things they're doing well, right? It becomes a little bit contagious. The stuff you do right tends to crowd out the things that you aren't doing as well at. So when we're talking about maybe the science behind building habits, that's really the key, especially if you're working with beginners. And we work with athletes of all abilities, but a lot of folks who are interested in coaching tend to come from the less experienced category because they want help. They're here to educate themselves, to become more independent athletes. And so they first need to develop the habits that supports the training. And so when you accentuate positives, you start to learn, you can help the athlete learn about the habits that are actually supportive. And that communication and feedback process, I think, is really vital and less integral to the work that we do at Microcosm. Like every coach is doing that. Every coach is trained to accentuate the positives. Even when an athlete goes out and, reflects on a workout and they're like, I did not do that correctly. Like this, and this went wrong. You're going to, as a coach, you're going to be trained to find the one thing that went right, even if it's just getting out the door, because you always want to accentuate what is going well for that athlete. That also helps the athlete build really positive associations with what they're doing. And running is objectively difficult, especially when you're newer. And even as you get better, the hills still hurt.
Yeah.
Like, the workouts are still painful. Like it's still hard. And so the more you see and make the connection and the correlation between the positive things that you're doing and then the result that is having for you, the more likely you are to want to go and perpetuate that process through the highs and the lows. And really, that's where I think coaches can make the biggest difference in the lives of their athletes, is helping guide the athletes through the plateaus and those low points. Because everyone feels good when training is going well. But when it starts to go wrong and things happen and life's obstacles come in the way and all of that stuff, that's where the relationship matters the most, because when you work through that, you're able to really ascend to higher levels on the other side. That's really one of the biggest keys. And I think like with what we're, the new iteration of Microcosm, we're calling it Microcosm 3.0. We've kind of had different variations of the business over the last 5 years, different deliverables. We've added stuff on. We've taken some things away that haven't worked. We've reduced contact points. We've experimented and we've done a lot of different things with the athletes in mind. And in Microcosm 3.0, we're really working to kind of like get all of that information together in a way where we now have a system that kind of provides for like, how do we provide that support when folks are going through those low moments and really ensure that they work through it, while also having like the points of contact that meet athletes in the most stressful parts of their training cycles, to get that feedback, to accentuate those positives, to do those little touch points that help continue to build that habit and bring people forward throughout an entire training cycle.
I love that.
I'm curious. I want to hear your opinion, Zoe, because you've been along for like basically this entire time as well and have been integral to the process. I'm curious if there's one thing in like the feedback process that you've learned has been important to you and that, you are excited to perpetuate forward in Microcosm 3.0.
Yeah, I think for me, it comes down to incentivizing the right things and disincentivizing negative detrimental behaviors. So in terms of the feedback I give, I want to always make sure that we're, like you said, focusing on the positives and focusing on giving feedback and paying attention to the right things. So I feel like I used to spend a lot of time trying to acknowledge and validate everything an athlete wrote in a log, but a lot of times doing so actually encouraged people to reflect more on some things that were at minimum neutral or even harmful. And so trying to use how I give feedback, when I give feedback, and what sort of feedback I give to drive people to pay attention to the right things. So not trying to get people to focus on pace, trying to really incentivize focusing on effort. Really trying to make sure that my feedback rewards paying attention to the right things, because at the end of the day, what we reward is what we pay attention to and what we spend more time thinking about. And so I want to make sure that my feedback shows people what they should be investing in, because it shows what I'm invested in. And I don't want to be investing in the wrong things.
I think that's really insightful, because like we often like focus on certain things, and then those things are going to uphold the stories we have about ourselves. And so, if we're over reliant on the metrics, or if we're over reliant on a coach's validation, or if we're over reliant on, any one of these other things that are external from us as athletes, it becomes much more difficult actually to become independent athletes. And I think that what I'm hearing from you is like this talk that we've actually had internally quite a bit over the last probably 6 months or so is really the difference between serving and pleasing an athlete, and really having a strong dichotomy and understanding of the difference between pleasing somebody and actually serving them. Serving them, the focus is on the athlete. It's focused on their result, while pleasing is more focused on
meeting the coach's emotional needs.
That's
so I
right.
think, the biggest part of my journey has been making sure that I am consistently servicing the needs of the athlete and the goals of the athlete. And sometimes that can get murky, and I want to make sure that I'm always like really clear with my athlete around like always creating feedback that promotes positive forward action, right? Like if someone tells me they had a really hard day and they list all the things that was hard about their day, it can be unclear if like, to me, like, does this person just need to say I see, like, feel seen and heard, or like, and that's not always my job as coach, right? Like my job is to say, okay, it sounds like you had a hard day. There's a lot of stress going on in your life. You're seen and you're heard. And what that means in a training context is that we're going to reduce volume. We're going to drop the tempo, and we're going to make sure to emphasize recovery and sleep tonight. Right.
Yep.
Like me saying, I'm sorry you had a hard day. That might temporarily ease some emotional discomfort, but it's not going to ultimately meet your athletic goals. And it's our job as coach to make sure that, again, like, yes, we are there to hear you out on the emotional side, but we're not human comment cards,
Yeah.
We're here to take what you've told us and put that into forward action. We're there to like there needs to be a reason behind the input. There needs to always be a reason behind the feedback.
And I think that also kind of comes to something that we've really, as an organization, been, trying to be more clear with is, whether or not we're performing a check-in or we're actually serving an athlete with that actionable feedback. And if, checking in a lot 5-6 days a week with somebody is more of a performative action than it is in developing a system that promotes independence, that gets athletes, right to the heart of what needs to be done in order to promote the athlete's success in an athletic context, and to get to those actions that you mentioned. What is one thing we need to get that information? The athlete had a hard day. They're dealing with a lot of work stress. Well, the action is, what does that do with the training plan? That's really what's important to the athlete, because in the end, athletes do want to feel seen and heard. And this is something that we noticed like 6 months in to launching the business, is like people came to us because their friends were like, we have these great coaches. They make us feel seen and heard. And how they demonstrate that is when I have something come up they offer me solutions to how we can change the training.
Right. And the solution is never just, wow, TJ, that sounds hard. The solution is, wow, TJ, that sounds hard. Let's make a game plan on how we're going to maximize adaptations through training and recovery going forward.
Right. And that's really, I think, the biggest thing, like as we're, making this move to Microcosm 3.0, and we're reducing some of the contact we give athletes. And I think that there's a lot of purpose and meaning behind that. And the biggest thing is opening up that space for more actionable feedback.
Right. We're reducing the total number of touch points so that we can maximize the efficacy of each individual touch point. We want each time that an athlete communicates with their coach to result in positive, actionable feedback and to be meaningful rather than just checking in to say, great job, you did your run. Which is great. And, at a minimum, athletes should be completing their training or getting in touch with their coach to discuss why the training completion isn't happening. But primarily we are here to translate what you're experiencing in your life and flex the training so that we can adapt as optimally as possible. And we have noticed that it just doesn't require the most touch points possible to do so. And in fact, having too many touch points can again inadvertently shift focus onto the wrong things.
I think it muddies the waters
Correct.
A lot too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it creates a lot more noise, and we want to get right to the heart of what is one action step we can take this week, or two action steps we can take between this week and next week to work on this challenge that we're having, to propel us in a direction that helps us take a step towards the goal that we're looking to complete. And that's the thing about the whole process of changing the way we do feedback and our communication, that I think is like, for me, has been really worthy of investigation and has been ongoing for us over probably the last 18 months, really. About, that shift, like communication isn't, is it great if it's just in the log? Should we create more space and have more entry points that reach athletes who want to have more one-on-one time and do more calls with athletes and things like that? And well, yeah, for us, we've seen that having one entry point was really great for our business for a long time. But at the same time, having more entry points allows us to hopefully reach more people and build a bigger community, because we're offering things that we've been told by athletes that they want.
Correct.
And having the ability to communicate in different ways then opens up that space where it's we can create those action steps in the training log. We can also uphold and create accountability through conversations outside of the training log that get to the heart of, okay, I gave you 2 action steps between this week and last week. Now in our check-in call, how did it go with those things? What points of friction did you have in the process of completing those action steps? What can you improve on? What's going well for you here? And then really opening up that space for what we call the deeper dive.
Yeah. And, we've seen athletes have a lot of success with using those deep dive calls, those one-on-ones with their coach, to really zoom out and talk about training on a more macro level. How do I structure my training season? How do I introduce additional stress via heat adaptations or strength adaptations? How do we talk about the 5-year? I've had athletes ask about their 10-year plan, and that shit is amazing. And it creates this amazing context where we can have really get into the sticky stuff one-on-one and do so in a way where the athlete, we're having that synchronous high value communication is built into the program structure for athletes who engage with it.
I know. This is so exciting.
Yeah, it is, because we're creating a structure that incentivizes the highest quality feedback and contact as possible. We wanted to just make sure that we were delivering the utmost to folks who are paying for the service.
That's right. Exactly. And also having other opportunities for folks who maybe I've just never wanted coaching to be that expensive, and never, as the business owner, I dictate the pricing. And we have, we've changed our pricing over the last 5 years, because we've had to. We're more experienced coaches. We can charge a bit more. We offer more, so we have to charge more to be compensated for the time.
Yeah. I mean, when Netflix started offering its own cutting edge, Oscar-winning original programming, of course they upped the price.
Sure. But I don't know. For me, it's I always get like a little bit weird about the pricing because I'm like, I don't agree when I see like triathlon coaching and it's $750 and you talk to your coach once a month and like that's just the norm. And there's so many different offerings out there. How do you create a system that also recognizes that for some folks, like finances are a barrier, and we don't want them to be a barrier for athletes who really could benefit from the programming.
Yeah.
And something that I really like that we've kind of tooled around with over
Yeah,
the last couple of years was the community calls, and using those as a way now to shift to more one-on-one time with coaches, and offering that to folks who can't really afford a plan that would be a little more expensive, but to have more of that one-on-one time with coaches.
And that's why it was so important to us that we create multiple pricing tiers here, is because we recognize that everyone's financial reality is different. We wanted to make sure that we still kept our programming as accessible as possible while maintaining the quality and making sure that we are raising the game on the entire coaching industry as well.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of at the point where we maybe in another few, I don't know if I'm ready to be like, we can influence what other coaches do.
But I mean, we coach many other coaches. Yeah. So like by, sort of the nature of that ripple effect.
Sure.
I think that, and like, we've been coached by a coach. So like, I take that sort of like chain of inspiration very seriously. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that when we expect more from ourselves, that we like via the transitive property, more like the people around us will be like, shoot, I gotta raise my game so I can be on Zoe's team, so that I can like run with Zoe. That's the kind of level I want us to be at.
Yeah.
And we understand that that looks different for other people at different stages of life. And that's why it was really important to us that, again, that we just created a more flexible pricing structure that meets people where they're at, but does allow people who need that, those higher touch points, offers them that flexibility as well.
Yeah. And that's what's so cool about this. And I like how maybe I was a little stuck in small vision syndrome, but I like how you're talking about, what we do having influence over what other coaches are doing, because there's so many coaches out there. The more professionalized every organization gets, the better it is for everybody, because when more folks are happy with the coaching they're getting the results that the coaching is designed to help them achieve. They're going to tell their friends. It's going to raise the game for running in general, and also for other endurance sports like ski mountaineering. And that is really integral for everybody. And the more, that eventually will allow for more resources for coaching organizations, so they can continue to level up and upskill. And, not every organization gets to have the benefit of working with like a multidisciplinary group of coaches like we do, which is really great for our continuing ed. But like continuing ed is super important for us, because we need to always be ready, because the hallmark of what we do is having that great plan.
Yeah.
And having it be individualized.
Right. And continuing to make sure that we stay engaged with the research. We're communicating with other coaches about best practices. So many of the folks on our team are working with Laura Pence and the Coaches Collective to upskill in their business practices, to upskill in terms of what sort of like mental and emotional support we're able to provide as coaches. And I think that, what people don't always see behind the scenes is how much we all are always as coaches trying to be better, right? Like we're not like only part of coaching is doing the actual coaching. So much of it is like reading articles, listening to podcasts, talking with other folks about how they support folks, about what, how they've gotten best results, and making sure that we also check each other on the team and hold each other accountable to providing the best coaching that we can.
My gosh, that's what's so great about working with the team, because we all are great coaches on our own, but together we are kind of unstoppable in a way, because we all have our own individual perspective. We all have the same foundation in education through the certification processes that we've all gone through. But at the same time, we all get to bring that individual perspective, our learnings outside of what we do, together in kind of a team continuing ed fashion, to make sure that we're all upholding, what we're supposed to be upholding, which is like coaches need to continue to upskill, and that's incredibly important for both the athletes and the health of the organization. One thing that I just, before we move on to transition season, I have always been against moving to Training Peaks. But the one thing that I really wanted to own in this conversation was my willingness to change to Training Peaks. Through the convincing, the continual convincing and conversations with some of the other coaches on the team.
And with athletes as well. We had a lot of athletes who it's been a continual pain point for them to manually pull their data off their watch or off their Strava and upload it into the log. For some folks, that system has introduced more friction than is helpful for their journey. So we wanted to move to Training Peaks because it happens seamlessly and automatically and instantaneously.
And I think just for what it comes down to for me is the simplicity,
right,
and the lack of points of friction that you mentioned. I really believe in developing a system that is simple, and Training Peaks is a lot simpler, especially than it used to be back when, we went through this process multiple times over the last 5 years. Do we shift people over? Do we try something else? How much data is going to be a distraction to the athletes versus how much is actually important to look at over time. And, like the ability to, I feel like now we're sponsored by Training Peaks, but we're not, but we
actively pay for that service.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited to use it because of the historical data tracking. We can still have all of the holistic metrics and subjective information that we really take into account with each check-in that can still be a part of this. And that is what really for me brings it all together, is having the best of what our training logs had combined with the simplicity and the minimal points of friction. And I'm actually excited.
Yeah. And I think that it also shows that, I would say if you've ever worked with a coach who never changed their mind about something, run, don't walk away from that person. We have owned in this process that, we were originally adverse to some of these technologies, but we've educated ourselves. And as these technologies have changed, so have our approach to them, right? And I think that we've sort of tempered our original perspective, and we've been really open-minded about how we can better integrate technology to make sure that the athlete remains centered in every step of the process and their needs remain centered, and how we can best serve them remains at the core of what we're doing.
So, talking about embracing change, we stopped calling, or at least I've stopped calling, and I know I've been reiterating this to the other coaches, and it's been a theme of the last probably 2 months. We've stopped using the term off season.
Yeah, I'm really not into it, and I don't really prescribe it for athletes. I will obviously structure in intentional downtime and adaptation time after big efforts and life events. But the off season is not something that I recommend, particularly for athletes at the level of many that we're coaching. If you do the Western States Hard Rock UTMB Triple Crown, yeah, girl, we're taking an off season. Courtney, I hope you are on the couch listening to this. But for a lot of folks, I think that if they're feeling they need to take downtime, that's actually symptomatic that something else in the training deeper is off balance that we need to investigate. And if things feel like they're going pretty well, that time is going to be best spent building base and maintaining consistency.
Yeah, and I like to call it a transition season because we're kind of transitioning between different phases in the year. So, for example, you're coming off of a 100-miler.
Woo!
What was that? About 6 weeks ago now?
5 weeks ago.
5 weeks ago. And to think that you would take, I don't know, 4 to 8 weeks completely off running would be what? Ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
No way. Taking, a solid 10 days off after 100 and really easing back in after is great. And probably much more ideal than taking 2 months off and then losing all of those adaptations and really detraining. That would be significant detraining if you were to take 4 to 8 weeks off. But to build in the idea of a transition season between what you've just done and then that base building, or what you're going to do this winter, or what goals you might have this winter or this spring. And I love the idea of a transition season rather than calling it an off season, because an off season kind of, to me mentally and to the athletes that I've coached, kind of has this connotation where, well, we can really loosen our grip. Right. And I don't like that, because that kind of takes us away from that habit building mentality that we've been working on all year. And good training, consistency, good training is about consistency. And the real key to that is having habits, because you need to be able to get out the door when you don't feel great. You need to be able to get out the door when motivation is low. Right. And that's where habits and like a habit-based mindset really makes a difference.
Right. And I feel like a lot of times athletes taking an off season can get stuck in this negative cycle of they take 4 to 8 weeks off. And then they put an event on the schedule and they feel like they have to cram to get ready for that event. It takes everything they've got to get ready for that event. And then after the event, they feel totally worn out and overdrawn again. And lo and behold, need off season. So I think that it's much better to have a more sustainable long-term approach that honors, yes, the natural ebb and flow. We are not going to be in peak condition all the time. We are not going to be training at maximum capacity all of the time. There are always going to be natural dips and valleys structured into training very intentionally so that we can maximize our adaptations. But we've seen that being that structuring in, significant time off without a demonstrated need, the evidence doesn't support that being the most effective, particularly for amateur level athletes.
Yeah, and I love to look at this as like you're just kind of putting things on simmer for a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe you came off that 100 and it's normal, a big race season. It doesn't have to be 100. That's just a lovely large example of things. But it can be any kind of a race season, any kind of period where you're doing more intense training or more intense racing, more intense events. And you need to start to simmer. Yeah. We need to bring motivation back naturally. We need to create space so things don't feel forced. We make sure that any symptoms of burnout that might be coming up are really dealt with over time, and kind of letting your body and your mind kind of go through that natural process. And so like I like to, with my athletes and what I've seen with some of the other coaches on the team, which I think is really effective, is lowering the volume, keeping in some of the hallmarks that are really important, like building some top end speed. So we keep some strides and some hills there, because those things actually really help to also maintain a high percentage of our VO2 max when we are decreasing the training load, which prevents detraining. But we're also introducing like some other activities. Right. Oh, you're not really feeling the run today? Great. Well, a bike ride, 60 minutes on the bike is good. Or, that long run, you're not feeling it, but like a long ride instead. And having that flexibility, I think really helps prevent athletes who are like felt like they over indexed a little bit on maybe that last goal of the season, and then are having a little trouble kind of coming back. And although like a lot of that's normal, we want to have a system or a season that respects that part of the process. Like there's something for every season. And so opening up that space, allowing athletes to respond a little bit more to how they feel, and then not making it so rigid, can be really important. And I've noticed that athletes, when you do that, when you have that approach with them, they start to build a little more independence around the process as well, which is great. So they get a little bit more used to and feel a little more accepting around, I did 4 instead of 6 today. I rode instead of ran today. And that flexibility that they're developing, the flexibility mindset that they're developing, and then later it's going to serve them better in those more high intensity periods of training when maybe they need a little bit rest, but they're kind of fighting against that. Like, I know I need to do this in order to achieve this goal.
Right. It goes back to one of my favorite Ted Lasso quotes of giving 60% effort 1,000% of the time.
And that's kind of optimal in a way, right? So we really want
consistency over intensity.
Yeah, always. And I always think about Kipchoge when I think about this. And I read an article a while back now where he was describing his approach to training. And he said he never gives a maximal effort ever. Maybe on race day, that's when he's going to show up and put it all out there. But all the other times he's doing an interval session, he's doing a hard workout at long tempo, whatever it is, he is always stopping short of the most he can give. And I think that like when you look at that and you look at his career and how consistent he's been at races, and he's, I think he's probably considered a Masters athlete at this point. He's over 35.
He's not Masters yet.
Well, what's the cutoff for Masters?
40.
Okay, 40. So he's getting into his later years.
He's in the twilight of his career, I think is the delicate way that we're.
So I'm not a Masters athlete yet? I always thought I was 35 and over.
Nope.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad I'm not.
Our boy Bromka is.
Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bromka. He's a listener.
He's a Masters now.
He's a master.
Wow.
Yeah. And still getting better.
Crushing it. And coaching too now.
It's
awesome. But anyways, I think that approach is really important. We don't force. We listen. Correct. We listen, and then we respond. And transition season is the optimal time to do that. We're letting things simmer. Are we stopping training?
No.
Are we not? Are we going to not engage in the process at all? No, we are absolutely not going to do that, because that doesn't promote the habits we need to build in order to achieve the dreams that we have. But we are giving ourselves some grace, and we're using a system, hopefully, working with a coach to help facilitate that in a way where, only minimal amounts of detraining happen, if any at all. If you do this right, you're really not going to detrain.
Yeah.
And then, you use that to transition into what you mentioned, Zoe, a base building phase, or, you want to push the ceiling for a while before getting into base. But however you want to do it, it's more personalized and up to kind of what the goals of the individual athlete are at that point. But this is like a really important season. I think we're kind of in it right now. I mean, this is when most people are doing
many athletes, and I think that like it can be like, I think, for some of our athletes in the South, it's almost like summer is that season for them, because it's really hot. It's hard to get out. Like maybe they don't have, they're only training for a spring marathon. There's nothing imminent on the calendar. And that's why we really, really focus on whatever your down season. I call it. I like the transition season, because it's all about what can I do now to set myself up for future success. Yeah, and that looks different for lots of athletes. But I would say very rarely is the best use of that time a total detachment from consistent, structured run training.
Agreed. Last word?
Love a transition season. I've also started calling rest days adaptation days, because that's when the adaptations happen. And I think that can help some athletes better understand the intent behind them. Take that or leave that.
I like that. That's not bad.
Adaptation day.
Yeah.
So that's what's actually happening. Sure, you may be resting physically, but you're also adapting.
Hopefully you're at least resting physically.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you've got a question for a future call, feedback, looking for support in your journey, we're here for you. Microcosm Coaching @gmail.com, microcosm-coaching.com. We'll see y'all next week.